So I want to come back to this critical point in regard to our Father and the life that He had. For those of us who know the divine pattern of God and His Son, that everything is of God and by the Son. This is the way that everything comes, and then from the Son it comes out to the universe. Which means that in the system that God has created, in His wisdom, there is the need of a channel or a mediator. And do you think that Satan knew where his life came from?
Yes.
He must have known, of course. This day, he can say to him, this day I have created you. He said to the Son, this day I have begotten you. To Lucifer, Christ says, this day I have created you. I've made you. He knew that he was made. Did he understand the character of God?
He must have.
I want to read you something from Desire of Ages.
At first, I believe.
Desire of Ages. It says this, page 761 or 761.5. But even as a sinner, man was in a different position from Satan. Lucifer in heaven had sinned in the light of God's glory. What is God's glory?
Character.
His character. He sinned in the light of God's glory. How much of that light did he have? He was the light bearer. He was full of the character of God. And it says here, to him as to no other created being was given a revelation of God's love. To no other created being was given such a revelation of the love of God as Lucifer. He knew exactly what God was like. To the fullest revelation that is possible for a created being to understand, he understood it. And it says here, understanding the character of God, knowing His goodness, Satan chose to follow his own selfish, independent will. That's sad, isn't it? He knew the character of God. He knew that God had given everything. Everything. He knew all of this. But in the light of that knowledge, he chose to follow his independent, selfish will.
What a warning.
It's so sad.
So sad.
So sad. And in order, the problem for Lucifer was that if he acknowledged that all of his life had come from the Father, he had to acknowledge that it all came through the Son. Now, if he wanted to be in the place of the Son, he had to have some process by which he could justify eliminating the Son of God. How did he eliminate the Son of God? He created his own belief in his own life source. And by saying that he is the same as God, it eliminates the need of mediator, a channel. There's no need for a channel anymore. And that's how he eliminated. To say, I have life in myself. And of course, eliminating the Son of God, Christ is the lawgiver, isn't he? He had to eliminate the law of God. And the way that he eliminates the law of God is to pit justice against mercy, and to say that, well, according to your law, every sin must be punished, and it presents God as dictatorial. And are you telling me to... I'm sorry, over here. And so, by moving, this is the point we were making this morning, by believing that he has life in himself, Lucifer automatically removed the need for the mediator or the channel, and he changed God's law to be arbitrary. Okay? Because if you have life in yourself, you don't need anybody to govern you. You don't need anybody to tell you what to do, because your own will is going to guide you aright. And this is the spirit that humanity is infected with, isn't it? They go astray from the womb. You know? You see the 2-year-old child when Mummy says to, come on, come here. Running away. Independence. I have freedom. I'm free. It's built into the DNA. It's this mindset of independence, this spirit of, this influence of being independent. You know, can you eat your broccoli, please? No. I have free will. I don't have to listen to you. I can do whatever I want. And I can demand whatever I want. I want more Smarties. M&M's, whatever. I want more cake. I demand it. And we're going to, what is it? We're going to stage a protest until I get it. That's how we protest. We learn to protest from a very young age. Resist. Resist. This all comes from this lie. We all drink. We all drink from this in the environments that we live in. And so this lie is what removed the need for the Son of God. In his mind, I don't need to be under anybody else. And it made God's law arbitrary. And so, with that thought in mind, we are reminded of, I think it's Romans 15, which says, all these things, 1 Corinthians 11, all these things are written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the world are come. And so this experience in the Old Testament, it's interesting that it says that, somewhere in the Spirit of Prophecy, it is written, that the downfall of Satan, the history of the great controversy and the downfall of Satan are all written in the law. It's all in there. It's interesting, isn't it? You've got to find it. And all these things are written for our admonition. And the story that I want to look at is the story of Daniel. And look at the parallels between Daniel and Christ in this process of a law that was introduced without mercy, that eliminates a mediator, and then this process coming back on themselves. Because Satan will be judged according to his own idea of justice, won't he? We read that statement a few weeks ago, but we look in Daniel chapter 6. We want to read from verse 1. I'm going to start somewhere. Gavin, have you got it? Start with verse 1. Let's read verse 1.
Verse 1. It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 princes, which should be over the whole kingdom.
Okay, and then got the next verse.
And over these 3 governors, of whom Daniel was one, that the princes might give account to them, so that the king would suffer no loss.
Okay, verse 3.
Then this Daniel distinguished himself above the governors and the satraps, because an excellent spirit was in him, and the kings gave him thought to setting him over the whole realm.
Okay, do we see a parallel here to Christ? Daniel is the first of the 3 presidents. Okay, there was three presidents, and then under the 3 presidents there was 120 princes that ruled the whole governor of Medo-Persia. Darius was the Median king, as a deputy for Cyrus, the Persian king. And what does it say that Darius or Darius, what was he thinking to do with Daniel? Set him over the whole realm. Yeah. So, and we see on the printout here at the bottom, we see next to verse 3 on the other side, Son of God, it says, Spirit of Prophecy, Volume 1, the great Creator assembled the heavenly host that he might, in the presence of all the angels, confer special honour upon his Son. We see that Darius thought to confer special honour upon Daniel, and God wants to confer special honour upon his Son. There's a parallel that we see taking place there. And what does it say of Daniel? That he had with him what?
Excellent spirit.
An excellent spirit. There's only one excellent spirit. That's the Spirit of Christ. That's the spirit that he had within him.
I find no fault in him.
No fault. He was, what does it say of Jesus? What did he say? I can't think of the words, but he basically said the same thing.
No God.
He findeth the Son of Man cometh, and he find, or whatever.
Nothing in him.
He finds nothing in me. Yeah.
Prince of this world.
The Prince of this world cometh. He finds nothing in me. Same words. Same process. So we find now in verse 4. Let's read verse 4.
Then the presidents and the princes sought to find occasion against Daniel concerning the kingdom, but they could find none occasion nor fault, for as much as he was faithful, neither was there any error of fault found in him.
What did Pilate say concerning Christ?
Find no fault.
I find no fault in him. Judge him according to your law. The same principle is being applied here. Now it says that the presidents, the other presidents, and of course Lucifer was the first of the created beings. He was the president of created beings, and maybe there were others with him in this process, and they were jealous when there was special honour conferred upon Christ, the Son of God, because of the excellent spirit that was in him, and they were jealous of him, obviously. And so we see on the chart here, Satan was envious and jealous of Jesus Christ. First Spirit of Prophecy, volume 18. I've put in there Matthew 4 and 9, where Lucifer, or Satan, said unto Christ, and he said unto him, all these things I'll give you if you'll but fall down and worship me. Amazing, isn't it? He was jealous of Christ, that he should have to submit. All the angels submitted to him. He was the first of the angelic host. They would submit to him and show obeisance and bow before him and honour him. But he had to do this to Christ. And it's like, I don't want to do this. I have to find some way. He had to find some way in order to break free of this control that Christ had over him. And as it says there in Prophets and Kings 5:39, the honours bestowed upon Daniel incited the jealousy of the leading men of the kingdom, and they sought for occasion of complaint against him. This is the story of Christ that we see being played out here. So let's read Daniel 6 verse 5, next section.
Then said these men, we shall not find any occasion against this Daniel, except we find it against him concerning the law of God, of his God.
Interesting. So, have to find some accusation against him in regard to the law of God. And this is where Satan comes in to attack on the issue of the law of God. And it says the law of course, in this case, it's the law of his God. And what is the law of Christ? John chapter 5 verse... Let's have a look at John chapter 5. What is the law of Christ?
To do the will of his heavenly Father.
To do the will of his Father. I do nothing of myself. What I hear, that I do. That's the law of Christ. Not to do anything of himself, but to wait upon his Father as to what he should do and how he should live. And this is the law upon which they wanted to accuse him, to find some way to get him. John, we'll just read that text in John.
John chapter 5.
5. What's 19 say? Have I got the right one, or is it 20?
Then he answered Jesus and said unto them, verily, verily, I say unto you, the Son can do nothing of himself.
The Son can do nothing of himself. Yeah?
But what he seeth the Father
Father do.
For what things soever he doeth, these also doeth the Son likewise.
That's the law of Christ. That's the law. He doesn't do anything of himself. And if there was anyone in the realm who could say, I could do something of myself, who would that be? It'd be Christ. But doesn't Christ have life in himself?
In the Trinity he does.
This is a tricky thing. As the Father has life in himself, so he's given to the Son to have life in himself. So from a physical point of view, he has life in himself. But there's an element in which is missed in all of this, and that is the spiritual dependence that Christ has upon his Father. Christ is spiritually dependent upon his Father. Why? Mount of Blessing, page 78. I like to quote this one. Mount of Blessing, 78. Every child lives by the life of its father. How do we live by the life of our Father? This is my beloved Son, in whom I delight. That's what Christ, that's what gives him purpose. That's what gives him meaning. His meaning is bound up in the value that his Father attributes to him. And this is a big point. This is a really, really big point. Christ does not find value in himself. He accepts the value that his Father places upon him. Do you see the difference? He does not look to his omnipotence for his value.
It's really powerful because it's changeless.
It's changeless. That's the point, isn't it? Your value to your Father in heaven is never changed. It doesn't matter what you do, your value will never change if you are in submission to your Heavenly Father and acknowledging him as your Father. Your value will never change. But as soon as you shift life to yourself, everything changes. And these are the key principles of identity wars. These are the things that we've been sharing, this value. So, Christ is dependent on his Father relationally. His essence as a being is dependent upon his Father's love, acceptance, and approval. Have you ever heard that taught before? Is it true?
And he probably does it all for us. I mean, I'm sure he does it all for many reasons.
Is that where his value comes from? I do nothing of myself. That's why he's called the Amen. His value comes from what his Father speaks of him. And that's a tremendous shift in understanding between the two kingdoms. And so they attack in relationship to his God. As we just read that in verse 5. We'll read Prophets and Kings 540. It's in the second section there. Therefore the presidents and princes, counselling together, devised a scheme whereby they hoped to accomplish the prophet's destruction. They determined to ask the king to sign a decree which they should prepare, forbidding any person in the realm to ask anything of God or man except of Darius the king. Now what's occurring with in this decree? What is the effect of this decree?
A death decree, Daniel.
It's a death decree, yeah, it is a death decree, isn't it? But if Daniel is the first of the princes, and they need to ask for something,
taking away the channel.
Taking away the channel. They don't need to ask Daniel anymore. They ask the king directly. So we see in this decree Satan's kingdom. He wanted every angel to be able to come directly to God. Well, at least him come directly to God without going through Christ. The other angels could come to him, but he would go directly to God without going through Christ. That's what's in this decree. It's aimed to eliminate Christ. Okay? It's eliminating the mediator, except for the space of 30 days. That's interesting, isn't it? I wonder what that means. A violation of this decree should be punished by casting the offender into the den of lions. Satan wanted to bypass Christ and have direct communication with God with no other means. So this is a decree to put Christ out of the way. Or in this case, put Daniel out of the way. And we see the quote that we had this morning on the other page, Psalms 94:20. Shall the throne of iniquity have fellowship with thee, which frameth mischief by a law? And these presidents, they come with a law to say, we want to honour you, king. We want to esteem your majesty and secure your throne, and that no one would pray to any god except you. Very flattering. But under this was this deceit to destroy Daniel.
The mind of Satan here.
And it actually says this. It says, I think I've got it somewhere in there, that Satan was behind this. Satan was. Ellen White actually says that he was directly behind it. Somewhere. Anyway, all right. So it says to dispute, again on this page 6, to dispute the supremacy of the Son of God, thus impeaching the wisdom and love of the Creator, had become the purpose of the Prince of Angels. So his purpose was to undermine Christ. And we see this in the story of Daniel. This decree, which is to uplift the majesty of God, was to destroy... sorry, was I talking about Daniel? I can't remember. Either one, they're both the same. To destroy Daniel, to destroy Christ. It was the same thing. So it was the jealousy of Christ that caused Satan to find fault with the law of God. So we come to verses 7 and 8 of Daniel. Who are we up to? Chapter 6, verses 7 and 8.
7. All the governors of the kingdom, the administrators, the satraps, the councillors and advisors, have consulted together to establish a royal statute and to make a firm decree that whoever petitions any god or man for 30 days, except you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions.
Verse 8.
Now, O king, establish the decree and sign the writing so that it cannot be changed according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which does not alter.
Okay. So this is a death decree for anyone who would seek to go through a mediator. Interesting, isn't it? To go through a mediator.
So startling, isn't it?
You must go directly to Darius, not through a mediator. And in this decree, is there any mercy?
None whatsoever.
It's a merciless decree, a death decree for going through a mediator. It's interesting, isn't it? Very interesting. And that's why, as I've got listed there on John 8:44, year of your father the devil, for he was a murderer from the beginning. The intent of the law in regard to Daniel, the same as in regard to Christ, was to get rid of Christ, to destroy him. That was the purpose. And I've wondered about this, if Satan knew about the character of God. Did he have some inkling? Did he have some inkling about the plan of salvation? Did he have some sense that God had a contingency plan?
Not sure.
That he could draw Christ down to make him pay the price? I'm not sure. That's something I'm not sure about. But to try and bring him down to destroy him. Interesting, isn't it? I'm still looking for any evidence on that, but I've wondered. I thought, did he know? His object was obviously to kill and to destroy Christ. This concept of a merciless decree to bring death to anyone who would go through the mediator was brought by who? Darius or the princes? What is this telling us about the great controversy? Who is the one who instituted the death decree? It was Satan. It wasn't God. It was Satan who brought the death decree. And he's trying to improve God's commandments, his statutes and his judgments, to bolster them. He's saying, you say you're a God of justice. You need to be firm. And as we indicated before, the only reason that Satan could start to argue this way was this shift of life source to make God's law arbitrary. That it demanded these things. Death is demanded. Okay? So this is the important thing. Darius did not institute the death decree. And we see everywhere say, God's justice demands the death of the transgressor. Well, in the story of Darius, that wasn't the case. Who was it that demanded the death of Mordecai? Was it King Ahasuerus?
Satan.
It was Haman, who was led by Satan. Haman instituted the death decree.
And he paid the price.
And he was the one that was hung on his own gallows. And then it's the same in this story. These two stories. And what does it say? A matter is established?
2 or 3 witnesses.
2 and 3 witnesses. Within the same kingdom, with Darius and Artaxerxes. With both in the Persian Empire, this same story is playing out twice to tell us that this is what happened in the very beginning. It was there was a jealousy factor towards a prince, someone, and wasn't it that Mordecai had saved the life of the king? Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
What is this telling us about the great controversy back in the beginning of time? Interesting what this could be pointing to. And Artaxerxes says to Haman, he comes in, Haman, what shall I do to honour the man? To honour the man that I want to delight in? He's going, well, it's going to be me, Take Mordecai and do this for him. You have to laugh, don't you? How the mirror works, how the mirror plays out, and how these things take place. So we see that this death decree was not brought by the king. But we come over to the next page now. We've talked about, there's a couple of quotes here. I'm going to just read the rest of these. On the Daniel side, down the bottom, appealing to his vanity, they persuade him that carrying out of this edict would add greatly to his honour and authority. We get this type of legislation through our governments all the time. Things that promise us freedom and blessing and liberty, and then they bring about destruction. This is how Satan is always working. Yeah. Over the page on the other side it says, while claiming for himself perfect loyalty to God, he urged that changes in the order and laws of heaven were necessary for the stability of the divine government. This is the process that is being played out.
He's the one that made it unstable.
Okay, so have we heard this before? Create instability?
Yes.
And then offer a process to stabilise it.
Type, anti-type. Thesis, antithesis.
Yes. There's lots of this going on in the world today, isn't it? Create trauma and difficulty, and then we have a solution. We can fix this for you. We can put armed soldiers on the streets to care for you and look after you.
Good cop, bad cop.
I remember last year when I landed in Toulouse in France, and I come out of the airport, and 4 soldiers or mercenaries or whatever they are, I don't know whether they allow their army on the streets, but there was 4 of them with these massive machine guns, and I had to walk right through the middle of them as they were walking towards me. It's like, okay, Lord, well, I'm with my angels. They're there to protect me. Did I feel protected? No, I felt a little bit insecure. I was like, oh, at least I'm with my angels, it's okay. It's like, walking with these big machine guns, like, if those guys start letting loose in here with those things, it's going to be, not good. We want you to feel safe. That's it. Arm every teacher. Give every teacher a gun. We want you to feel safe.
Teachers with a gun?
That's what they're talking about in America.
No, just being facetious. Teachers with guns, they're a bit... don't go there.
Yes. I told you to sit down, young man. I've got a gun. It just leads to all kinds of really interesting scenarios, doesn't it? Now this is the part on page 540 of Patriarchs and Prophets, the second last comment there on the Daniel side. In the conspiracy thus formed, Satan had played an important part. This was a principle that he was familiar with. He understood this because this is what he had done in heaven, and now he's playing it out in the kingdom of Daniel, or of the Medes and the Persians. And it was recommended for the stability of the government. So this is the process that is taking place. Now we come to a part which most people would say is not a parallel, but 6 verse 9. Where are we up to? Verse 9?
Yep. Wherefore, King Darius signed the writing and the decree.
So the king signs the decree. Now, in the case of Darius, he's oblivious.
He's free.
He didn't see what was coming. But did God sign the decree?
Well, he signed in the sense that he permitted
Yes,
it.
he did. He
So
signed
he
it
did.
by his hand.
God?
Yes.
What decree did he sign?
The 10 Commandments.
Okay, he signed the 10 Commandments, but I'm talking signing a decree that involved
The
death.
death of somebody else.
Did God sign a decree that involved the death of somebody else?
Satan did that.
I think so.
Administration
Of course. He did, in paradise. You can do everything here. You can eat of any trees, but not from this one. As soon as you eat from this, you will have to die. You will die.
That's interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah, von whom came? That didn't come from Satan. I don't think so.
Well, let's keep digging this out. Digging this out. So remember this morning, when we were talking this morning, when Satan began to air his concepts of angels not needing to be guided and having life in themselves, we read the statements this morning. You can go back earlier in the presentation. When the angels were looking down this world, what did the angels think needed to happen? What did they think was necessary?
justice.
They thought that they should be exterminated for their rebellion against the God of heaven. What about the unfallen world? If God had arisen to destroy them, the unfallen worlds would have said,
Amen.
Amen. So this concept of justice was already, and you need to think about this, carefully, in terms of people looking upon the character of God, the angels having a perception of God's justice. And they look upon God, and in their minds they see a God that is willing to exterminate the transgressor. So God had to sign the decree. He had to sign it. To think about this for a bit. And this is where we come to the statements. Let's go back to the beginning. Let's read this very carefully, because this is an important point. God didn't come up with the decree, but God signed the decree. God signed the decree, he didn't come up with it, but he had to sign it. Let's go back to the beginning. I want you to read down, false justice on the throne. Justice and mercy stood apart in opposition to each other, separated by a wide gulf. So in the minds of all the intelligent beings of the universe, there is a perception of justice that the transgressor must be punished. Satan had been urging this. It makes sense. Most people are thinking, well, I think most people are on board with this. They have this understanding. So, the Lord our Redeemer clothed his divinity with humanity and wrought out in behalf of man a character that was without spot or blemish. He planted his cross midway between heaven and earth and made it the object of attraction, which reached both ways, drawing both justice and mercy across the gulf. Okay? Justice moved from its exalted throne, and with all the armies of heaven approached the cross. There it saw one equal with God, bearing the penalty for all injustice and sin. With perfect satisfaction, justice bowed in reverence at the cross, saying, "It is enough." Now, to the intelligent universe, they think this is God who bows in reverence to the cross. You understand what I'm saying? They think this is God, because that's their perception of God's character, their perception, their understanding. And so, knowing where this path would go down, knowing where it would go, the Father and the Son communed with one another in the council of peace. And when it came time, when Adam and Eve sinned, God signed the decree.
But go back to sinners brings its own punishment. Psalm 9:16, the Lord is known by the judgment
which he executes.
Don't eat from the tree. The wicked is snared in the work of their own hands, his own hands. So they signed their own decree by doing the wrong thing. God didn't necessarily sign the decree for me.
Come back, have a look at this. Keep working on this. Page 2, just above, how could Satan create this counterfeit? Because remember, stick with the parable. Darius signed the decree. Alright? God permitted his son to be delivered up for our offences. He himself assumed towards who? The sin bearer, the character of what? A judge. Divesting himself of the endearing qualities of a father. You see? He signed the decree.
Yeah, it depends in what sense you want to look at it. Both answers are correct.
Of course.
But one eclipses the other.
Because it's Satan's idea of justice that has been put onto God. So it's Satan who created the decree. This is what we're saying. Satan originated the idea of the decree. He masterminded it. He put it to God. Just as every sin must be punished. And so God had to sign the decree.
Signs off on it.
He signs off on it.
It'll be what it'll be. Now let's watch it play out.
The law of the Medes and the Persians. And that he signed off on it because it was the only thing, remember, that justice comes and bows before the cross. The death warrant of Christ is signed. But that death warrant was not originated by the Father. It was originated by Satan.
That's right.
But God signed off on it.
Way?
You see it?
Yeah.
Way?
He had to. In order to satisfy and therefore reconcile justice and mercy, to bring justice and mercy back together, through this concept of the cross, he could sign off on it. And then, for people who would express faith in Christ, mercy could be given to them in a system that does not allow mercy. Maybe this is not good for a Sabbath afternoon presentation. I think you're alert. I can see most of you are alert. This is really quite profound in this understanding that God was not caught off guard like Darius was caught off guard, but he had to sign off on it.
Because Galatians 6:7 says, "Be not deceived."
God is not mocked. As a man sows,
whatever man soweth, he shall also reap. So he did something wrong, so he gets the result of what he did.
Yeah. So we ultimately come to that. And this is the thing as we continue in the story of Daniel, because who gets their bones crunched at the bottom of the lion's den in the end? The one who originated the decree.
Yeah.
They get their own idea of justice meted out upon them.
He got what he deserved back through the mirror.
Okay. So this is really, it's quite profound, isn't it? This story. God is placed in a position where he's divested of the endearing qualities of a father. He assumes the character of a judge. Because the universe perceived justice in this light. So he had to let the universe go in this direction. He had to sign off on it.
That's right.
And so, without the shedding of blood, there is no remission of sin. The decree is signed. And this then opens up a way for mercy to be given. God, in his wisdom, able to work this out. It's amazing. So, now, and we'll have to keep thinking about this and go over it, but the story is quite simple. Let's not lose the simplicity of the story. The princes, in their jealousy of Daniel, formulate and originate a decree, and the king signs it. It's a very simple proposition. Okay?
And he felt honored.
Yes. And it was to honour the king.
Of course.
In honour of the king.
Yes.
Of course,
he did notice.
In God's case, he knew it wasn't honouring him. He knew this. But Darius didn't know this. He thought it was honouring him until he got caught out. And of course, in 6:9, of course I put the quote there, he himself assumes towards the sin bearer the character of a judge. Let's read this other quote here on page 7. The king signs the decree under Christ. The first thing, Satan had charged God with satanic attributes and has claimed the attributes of God as his own. Through his serpentine sharpness, through his crooked practices, he has drawn to himself the homage that human beings should have given to God and has planted his satanic throne between the human worshipper and the divine Father. That's why humans' concepts of justice are punishment, death, destruction. This is Satan's throne inserted between the Father and his creation. And because Satan was able to insert this in there, and we are fully convinced that justice demands death, God signed off on the death warrant in order to be able to give mercy. Okay. So, and we see the signing off on, at the bottom quote here, God bowed his head, satisfied. Now justice and mercy could blend. Now he could be just, and yet the justifier of those who should believe in Christ. Now, in God's principle of justice, was justice ever at a point where it didn't blend with mercy?
In reality.
Never. But this new counterfeit system of justice came in. And so through the cross, in the signing off of the death warrant, he's able to make them blend again. He's able to overturn Satan's decree. He overturns it. This is why Christ had to die. Not by the Father. And this is why I mentioned this week, if you've read the book Identity Wars, I have a little story in there about the bridge keeper. The bridge to the drawbridge where the gates, the bridge goes up, and there's his son playing on the cogs of the wheels, and the train is coming, and the bridge is up, and the father pulls the lever and crushes his son. That story is false, because it didn't happen that way. God did not pull a lever to destroy his son, being caught off guard by a train that came around the corner. There are elements of the story that speak to us of God's willingness to give his son. But the story paints God as the one who instituted and made this happen. Either to get himself out of a tough situation, or he had to do this to save the people. It's not true. It didn't happen that way. But most people believe that God did kill his own son, or that his wrath might be satisfied, or any of these things. But God did not institute the death decree. It was Satan, in the form of Haman and the princes of the Medo-Persian Empire. The Bible tells you who originated the death decree. It wasn't God, but he signed off on it. Interesting, isn't it?
How does that fit in with what Rolf said? Because I was thinking the same thing about the garden, and if you eat of this fruit you shall surely die. How does that fit in with that?
Okay. In the day you eat of the fruit of the tree, was that a death threat? Or was it a merciful warning? If you go down this path...
Revelation.
It's not arbitrary.
You can take it either way.
Yeah, but that's the question. How you take it depends on how you view the character of God.
That's right.
Arbitrary or consequential.
Is it God saying, you know, if you walk off this cliff, you'll die?
It's exactly the same.
Or is it, if you walk out that door, I'll blow your head off?
That's right, yeah.
Which one is it? There's a massive difference between the two.
But it's like the speed sign on the side of the road. That's an advisory to say that if you exceed it and you get caught, you will pay the penalty. But if you see that and just drive past doing the right thing, you'll have no issue.
In that particular case, it's the government who has set up the penalty.
But the thing is, without the penalty or going back to that side of it, is simply a sign or a word spoken that if you do something, it will be. So there's a reminder there. There's a reminder for you, for all of us, to keep in the back of your mind. Simply don't go there. If there is a line, don't go beyond it.
You can read that as you're saying it. The bigger picture is that it's arbitrary because the government says it's 60. Well, who says it should be 60? We voted you in. Like, I wanted to be 80.
I kind of think that arbitrary because God told his Adam and Eve they can eat from everything, but from that one tree, as soon as they were to eat, so this law has been made by God himself. So whether it was unlikely or was likely that there one day the temptation would have been that bad, or, I mean, not so strong, they would have never touched it.
So if we say then that they ate, it's because they did eat the fruit of the tree. So what is it that killed them? Was it the fruit?
It was not the fruit. It was the principle God has given to them. It's like if you leave that room, I blow up your head. Same thing. It's the same thing. It's just a different color.
We're swinging back to arbitrary intervention, and this is what we're arguing. Does the character
Well,
of God...
that wouldn't be arbitrary, because that is a law which he has put forward. So you have freedom to do the law or transgress the law.
And this brings us to the heart of the great controversy. If God originated this law, and it was, I'm going to blow your head off, then God is the author of death. That's what that's saying. If God is saying, you are going to, if you go in that direction, you will walk off a cliff and you will kill yourself, then he's not the author of death. He is actually warning them, this is going to cause you will destroy yourself.
Right.
And how would they destroy themselves? By eating the fruit of the tree, and because God had said to Lucifer, you can go to that tree, and that's the only place from which you can speak to them. So he knew that if they would go and eat from the fruit of the tree, it would give Satan access to now speak to them more directly, influence them with his philosophy and ideas, which would destroy them.
Right.
But that would only happen if they would choose against him. And to choose against God is to choose the opposite of God, which is Satan. So he's giving them you're going to walk off the cliff. Okay?
What is then with the Ten Commandments? I mean, what is transgression of the Ten Commandments? It's the same thing like eating or touching the fruit.
Okay.
So then the commandment doesn't show me the character of God, because he told you, you should this, and this. So, and I just simply has chosen to do something he doesn't want me to do. And what does this mean? I mean, I surely will die, or what is it? So, well, don't worry about it, we'll care about it later.
Well, yeah, I'll come back to that. You were going to say something?
I was just going to say, if you're talking about the fact that a law had been said, don't eat of this tree or you'll die, well, that was obviously a law that was set up because sin had already entered the universe. So it wasn't something that had happened before. So Satan was already making these accusations of God before that scenario happened on the earth.
And God had to provide a place within the garden to give man the power to choose. If there was no option for him to choose outside of God, man doesn't have power of choice. He had no power to choose. And God says, all those who hate me love death. Because God is the source of life. And if you disconnect yourself from him, it's like if we were powered by an electric cord, and we say, and God says, do not take the plug out of the wall, or you'll die. I mean, it's obvious, isn't it? You take the cord out, you die. I mean, did God kill you? No.
So look at the commandments in the same way. God's saying, well, first of all, you use the word commands, but they're actually promises. So if you stay connected with me, you're not going to want to look for anyone else, and you're day, and you're going to look after the people. It depends which way you want to look at it.
And this is where the Ten Commandments, if God is the only one that has life, then the Ten Commandments is protecting you. If you have your own life source, the Ten Commandments are restricting you. You see the difference?
Beautiful.
Oh, how I love thy law is my meditation day and night. That's only true when you believe that God has the only life source. If you have your own life source, then it's a yoke of bondage, which neither us or our fathers could bear. It's the same law, but it depends on what you believe about yourself. Whether you have your own life, or whether God has the life to give you. Okay?
I don't believe there's anyone here among us who would skip the middle part there and said, I have my own life and I have my own power. I don't think so.
We wouldn't say that.
No.
But from a small child, we've all been living this way.
Yes, I understand.
We're still battling that because it's in our nature to live independent from God. We fight every day to die to self, to say, no, not my will, but thy will. Our will's always knocking on our door.
Yeah, I want to do it my way. Don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me how to live. And all that. And when the policeman comes the other way, what speed am I going?
I resemble that comment.
Sorry?
I resemble that comment. I mean, resent that comment. Depends how you look at it. Yeah.
How do you read?
How readers out. Yeah.
You know, is it there for your blessing? So this is a big point we're making here about the signing off on a decree which God did not originate. Because Faith and Works, page 74, tells you Satan is the author of death. Okay? Hebrews 2:14, Satan has the power of death. Okay? If Satan has the power of death, then God is not the one that has the power of death, which means he's not arbitrary. He's not inflicting death on people if Satan has that power. The last enemy to be conquered is death. So does God say, in the day you eat thereof, I will use my enemy. I will be my own enemy and I will kill you.
But that brings me even to the story from Job, when Satan came to heaven.
Yeah.
And
see my servant Job.
All around there. Did you see my
servant Job?
My servant Job. Yes, but only because you protect him.
Yeah.
And then we know the conversation which followed. So even here, it was God who protected him, but he knew he would not turn around. But it was a great cost involved for the time being, as well as for Job. I mean, even with his friend, we know all these conversations. And
do you think in the life of Christ that when Satan was in heaven and Jesus is there at the side of his Father, that Satan never said to him, "You only follow him because of what he gives you"?
Yes, of course.
I think he ever said that?
Yes.
And you know, we can say the same, that we only follow God because of the blessings.
Okay. So when Jesus came and he experienced what he experienced, did he show that he only followed God because he was getting everything from God? No, he showed the opposite. He followed God because he believed in his character.
That's right.
And this is what will happen for the 144,000. They will lose everything. And then the world will see they're not following God because of what they can get out of it. They follow God because they believe in his character. So it's the same. And that's what Job demonstrated. Job exposed Lucifer. He exposed the lies of Satan. People only follow you because what they get out of you. Yeah. And Job disproved that. He absolutely disproved it completely.
Well, amazingly, because he didn't know about the conversation between...
No, which made it all the more powerful.
Exactly.
He didn't even know about it. If he knew what was going on, okay, I've just got to stick in there and I'll show him. Yes. I've just got to grit this out for a while. No, not the case.
It had to come from within Job to be relevant. Otherwise, Satan could say, well, you told him what to say.
Yeah,
you put ideas in his head.
Yeah.
So God had to put him in a place where he had to confront himself and his circumstance, and then he came to the realisation, though he cursed me, yet will I follow him, you know.
He needed an unbiased witness. And Job became a witness to the truthfulness of God's character. And therefore Job brought atonement to the universe. Now think about that one.
The Spirit of Christ which was in him.
The Spirit of Christ which was in him. Christ, you know what the word Job means?
Yeah.
Hated. That's Christ. He's hated. Hated. Interesting, isn't it?
The invisible put his spirit into the type, and then the invisible became the antitype in the flesh. So double.
When Job lost everything and he said, naked came I into the world, naked go out, blessed be the name. That was Christ in him. Job was dead. No man could say that in and of himself. That was Christ in him, manifesting that character for him.
In thy hands commit my spirit.
Thy hands I commit my
Regardless,
spirit. Powerful, isn't it? So there will be a final atonement where the universe sees once again that there is a group of people upon the earth who serve God because of his character.
Because of who he is.
Regardless, the time of Jacob's trouble, The hip is put out of the side. Intense pain comes to this group of people in one form or another. I will not let you go except you bless me, because I know your character. I know that you love me. Even though Satan is convincing me and you yourself seem to be pulling away from me as if to say you're filth. You've got a filthy, adulterous mind full of garbage and self-gratification and all the life that you live, and Satan's, you really... No, I know God. I know His mercy. I know His love towards me. I know He's going to care for me. That's what's going to come. It'll be atonement. Atonement for the universe takes place. This is final atonement in the relational concept. We're not dealing with the objective elements and the legal framework and that lawyers like to use. There's that aspect as well, but we're not looking at that. Okay. So let's come to Daniel 6 verse 10. 6 verse 10, after the signing of the decree. Think about this. This is quite amazing. Who are we up to? Verse 10?
Now when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went into his house, and his windows being open in his chamber toward Jerusalem, he kneeled upon his knees 3 times a day and prayed, and gave thanks before his God, as he did other times.
Who do you think he prayed for when he was on his knees? Think he prayed for those other 2 presidents? Darius?
And everybody else,
He would have prayed for all of them, wouldn't he?
Yeah, everybody. Man, they make a big mistake.
As he did before.
As he did before.
Yes.
Praying for them, praying that God will bless them, praying that God will look after them and their families and their children. This is what Christ does, isn't it?
Yes. And he invoked himself that he was a sinner. I mean,
yeah, in his case.
Yeah.
But in this case, he's the mediator for the whole nation. He's praying 3 times a day. Interesting, it says 3 times a day.
Yeah.
I've got a quote here on the other side in reference to Christ. Early Writings 1:26. The anxiety of the angels seemed to be intense while Jesus was communing with his Father. 3 times he was shut in by the glorious light of the Father. The 3 reference there is interesting in terms of the intercession, the relationship. These men want to come between Daniel and his God. And he could have just shut the windows and... But what message does that send? Well, it would seem like, he stopped praying to his God. Nobody's going to come between me and my God. I'm not going to change my practice.
Not faith.
Because I need to continue to pray for these men who are seeking to kill me. Interesting, isn't it? Yeah. He prayed, and then we read verse 11.
Okay, then these men assembled and found Daniel praying and making supplication before his God.
Supplication, interceding. Father, have mercy on the king, mercy on my fellow presidents, satraps, on translation. Traps, that's a good word, isn't it?
Yeah.
And verse 12.
Then they came near and spake before the king concerning the king's decree. Hast thou not signed the decree that every man that shall ask a petition of any god or man within 30 days, save of thee, O king, shall be cast into dead lines? The king answered and said, the thing is true, according to the law of the Medes and Persians.
Which alters not. The king it's true, it's absolutely true. And then now comes the pa-da moment. Verse 13. Where are we up to?
3 men came.
Then answered they and said before the king that Daniel, which is of the children of the captivity of Judah, regardeth not thee, O king, nor the decree that thou hast signed, but maketh his petition 3 times a day.
Of the captivity of Judah, we be not born of fornication, like this man. That was spoken of Christ, wasn't it? He's of the captivity. He's a captive. It's not really proper for a captive to be made prince over all of us. Same story with Joseph. Comes from the dungeon. This Hebrew should be made ruler over the nation. And so it says, verse 14, then the king, when he heard these words, was sore displeased. The words with himself, I think if you read the Hebrew, is supplied. It doesn't say it directly, it says he was sore displeased. But with himself, obviously, is one of the readings because it fits the story that Darius should be displeased with himself because it appealed to his vanity. But in the case of God, obviously, he's sore displeased that they are seeking for the death penalty against Christ. And set his heart on Daniel to deliver him, and he laboured till the going down of the sun to deliver him. I haven't had time to go into some of these details, but we want to point out that on this page 8, halfway down on the Daniel side, for an entire day the princes watched Daniel. 3 times a day they saw him go to his chamber, and 3 times they heard his voice lifted in earnest intercession to God. This is the role of a mediator. This is the mediation that Christ was doing. And notice, I've got in the next quote, where did Daniel look towards?
Jerusalem.
And what was it, Jerusalem? The sanctuary.
Yeah.
He is interceding in the sanctuary, towards the sanctuary. And of course, this is a symbol of Christ in the sanctuary, mediating on our behalf. He doesn't stop his work of intercession. And this speaks so powerfully of all the work of the little horn power, of the daily and the transgression of desolation, who seek to obscure the work of Christ, who seek to destroy what Christ's doing on our behalf, to mar his sacrifice through an appeasement-based system. That's another whole story that we need to go into. But I want you to notice something in verse, I've got over here in Psalms 57, 3-6. I'll just read this for you. He shall send from heaven and save me from the reproach of him that would swallow me up. God shall send forth his mercy and his truth. See, this issue of Satan saying merciless justice, but he sends forth his mercy and his truth. My soul is what? Among lions, and I lie even among them, that are set on fire, even the sons of men, whose teeth are spears and arrows, and their tongue a sharp sword. This is what Christ is enduring for us. Be thou exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let thy glory be above all the earth. What is his glory? His character. Let your character be revealed in this process. Though I go to the lions, your character will be revealed. This is what is being said here. They have prepared a net for my steps. My soul is bowed down. They have digged a pit before me, in the midst whereof they are what? Fallen themselves. This is exactly what takes place. So now, just very briefly look at Daniel 6:17. I want to finish off. It says, and a stone was brought and laid upon the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet. What happened to Christ? The stone was? Mark 15:46, and they brought fine linen and took him and wrapped him in linen and laid him in a sepulchre which was hewn out of the rock, and rolled a stone upon the door of the sepulchre. Did they put a seal on it?
Yep.
Same thing. Put a seal. Now notice this in it says in Psalms 35 verse 11 onwards. I just want to read through this. It says, false witnesses did rise up, and they laid to my charge things I knew not. Did that happen to Christ? False witnesses?
Yes.
They rewarded me evil for good. Did that happen to Christ? Yeah, exactly. But as for me, when I was sick, my clothing was sackcloth. I humbled my soul with fasting, and my prayer returned into my own bosom. But in mine adversity they rejoiced. Did they rejoice? Did the Pharisees rejoice?
Yep.
Did the Persian princes rejoice when they had Daniel cornered? Of course they did. And gathered themselves together, yea, the abjects gathered themselves together against me, and I knew it not. They did tear me and ceased not. With hypocritical mockers, Where are we going? 8, 9, there it is. It says, in feasts they gnashed upon me with their teeth. Did they gnash upon Christ with their teeth? This is a crucifixion psalm. And then it says, Lord, how long wilt thou look on? Rescue my soul from their destructions, my darling from the lions. So we see the parallel to the lion's den. The lion's den experience is the cross experience of Christ. And Daniel went through that process. But he was brought up, he went down into the earth, didn't he? And then he was brought back up out. And he was in with the lions there for that time period. This is a symbol of the cross that is being given here.
In Psalm 91.
This is in Psalm 35.
Psalm 91, you will tread on the lion and the adder, the young lion and the serpent you will trample underfoot.
Okay. 91 where?
Psalm 91, towards the end.
Towards the end?
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah.
I will dwell in the secret place of the Most High.
Just underneath, after the, I will bear thee up with the...
Okay.
After that bit.
Good.
Yeah.
I hadn't looked that far. So it's all through there, isn't it? About the lion, symbolism of the cross, going into the pit, stone rolled over. This is all speaking to what would happen with Christ. And then, of course, Daniel 6:24, and the king commanded, and they brought those men which had accused Daniel, and they cast them into the lion's den. Their children and their wives. Why is that statement included? Visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children under the third and fourth generation of them that hate me. All those that embrace this. The children of this deception manifest themselves. They end up. The daughters of Babylon. The daughters of Babylon will be thrown into the lake of fire. The wife of Babylon. Same thing. Samaramis. It's all of that in the spiritual principle. It says, and their wives, the lions, had the master of them and break all their bones in pieces, or ever they came to the bottom of the den. And what is it that destroys the wicked at the end of time? We need to, I'll just read this, let's just read this statement. Satan will be judged by whose idea of justice? By his own idea of justice he will be judged. Satan set up the lion's den situation and he will be destroyed. He's the one that erected the gallows and he was hung upon them. This is played out again and again. If God should remit the punishment, he said he would not be a God of truth and justice. I want to read to you this statement in Desire of Ages 764. It says, listen to this. Then the end will come. God will vindicate his law and deliver his people. Satan and all who have joined him in rebellion will be cut off. Sin and sinners will perish, root and branch. Satan the root and his followers the branches. The words will be fulfilled to the prince of evil. Because thou hast set thine heart as the heart of God, I will destroy thee, O covering cherub, from the midst of the stones of fire. Thou shalt be a terror, and never shalt thou be any more. Then the wicked shall be as shall not be. Yea, they shall diligently consider his place, and it shall not be. They shall be as though they had not been. And quotes a number of verses. Now listen carefully to the next statement. We've just described, he says, I will destroy thee, O covering cherub. Is this God using arbitrary power? I'm going to kill you now. Listen to the next statement. This is not an act of arbitrary power on the part of God. The rejectors of his mercy reap that which they have sown. God is the fountain of life. And when one chooses the service of sin, he separates from God and thus cuts himself off from life. He is alienated from the life of God. Christ says, all they that hate me love death. God gives them existence for a time that they may develop their character and reveal their principles. This accomplished, they receive the results of their own choice. By a life of rebellion, Satan and all who unite with him place themselves so out of harmony with God that his very presence is to them a consuming fire. The glory of him who is love will destroy them. Isn't it amazing? Because they are so struck by his selflessness, his giving nature, and it is so different to their own selfish nature that it creates in them such a sense of guilt that that guilt will destroy them. Simply by looking upon his character. The guilt of their own transgression and selfishness will cause such a pressure on their life that it will crush out their life. And it's all by their own doing. So, I hope you can see in the story of Daniel a little bit more about the death decree. It wasn't God who originated it, but God signed off on it, but it was Satan in the end. Daniel was put in the lion's den, a symbol of the cross. Christ comes out, and he becomes victorious. And then, in the end, the wicked will be crunched in that lion's den according to their own idea of justice. So if we believe that God will personally and directly kill the wicked, then that's what we will get. What we think is his justice is the justice we shall receive ourselves. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. All the others found hatred and tyranny of God towards them because that's what they were in their hearts. But Noah found mercy, found grace, and that's what he received. You like that? I like that too, Daniel. Yes. So as you judge, you will be judged. Very well, he says to the man with 5 talents. You took the 5 and you made 10 because you believed that I was a blessing. But the man with the 1 talent, I knew you, that you were a hard man, reaping where you do not sow. He says, very well, out of your own mouth it says, I will judge you. Out of your own mouth I will judge you.
So even the world tend to sense that. They use loosely the term karma will come and get
Karma.
you. Yeah, which is like a counterfeit of this and is deficient of other things and it's based on fear. But they still recognise that effect. Do unto others, it'll come back to you.
Golden rule. Yeah. Very good. All right. So let's have a prayer.